1990, August of 1990 it happened to be.
One thing I've noticed is that when he talks, he pauses a lot, and that just might help. It might help to just think about that when you're translating, because of just the fluidity of the signs, just to make sure everything keeps a good pace.
My wife, we had the good fortune of spending 6 days in the Boundary Waters together. It happened to fall over her birthday, which is August 8th.
When he talks about her birthday, you really notice the sentiment and how much he loves her. So that's definitely something I would definitely capture in the translation.
I had so many times decided to thwart a long portage by walking upstream and making our own little route out of the day.
The word portage, I think for a lot of novice people, they wouldn't understand what it means. The first time I came across that word, I didn't know what it meant either. So as you're doing that translation, just to remember, okay, first spell it out, and then just to actually show the portage, I think would be very important.
Porting a 300 plus rod portage, which is pretty.
And the 300 plus rod. So that's another one where I think a rod equals 16.5 feet, something like that. So another thing to keep in mind, maybe
portage,
too.
And so I thought we could take some time off of it. She wasn't real comfortable with that situation, but we agreed to follow along and do it. And we happened to be going upstream on the back.
When I'm thinking about how I would translate, she wasn't real comfortable. That's definitely an opportunity to show, the different people and different perspectives, and how he was feeling, really excited, but she, not so much. So good opportunity to show that.
I didn't realize that until we'd kind of gotten into it, committed. But the portage consisted of pushing the canoe up a series of small falls and kind of lining around some rapids, and we made our way. At some points had to take bags out of the canoe and fishing rods and whatever else was.
That whole part of describing the portage was really, really, I think, visually good. So that, it was excellent. He kind of, lays it out, having to cross, different obstacles and having to take out stuff off the, canoe and everything. So at that point, I think he offers a lot of visual clarity, just showing the depth of what he had to experience on the portage.
Playing this gear that we had and make our own paths through the woods, which proved pretty tough. As you know, if you've spent some time in the it's pretty thick forest.
And that was another good visual, the thick forest. So as probably they don't know, because they're all novices, so he's like, as you probably spent some time in this thick forest, and so that's a good opportunity for them to, envision, wow, and dense, so that was a good one as well.
And as we made our way through, I'd go up maybe 50 rods or so, and with the canoe, and then come back and see how Amy's progress was. And
right.
We probably spent 3.5, 4 hours, and when we started this adventure it was right around lunchtime. So 2 hours into it, the frowns and the long faces.
So I think this portion, when he talks about time, to me is a little bit confusing, because as I would be, translating it, I'd be thinking, okay, he's talking about this whole thing takes 3.5 to 4 hours. We started at lunchtime, 2 hours into it, and so setting that up, to make sure it actually flows all together instead of jumping around from idea to idea to idea, and maybe confusing the message itself.
It started to show up and remind you that it was her birthday, and as we neared the end, the tears started to flow a little bit. When I'd come back and I'd reassure and
when he says the tears started to flow a little bit, in my mind I'm thinking is that who's crying? Is it you? Is it her? Or is it the both of you? So that's a little, and I think it's just her, but at the same time I was a little bit confused, and so
I try and say, come on honey, this is a good day, and any day in the Boundary Waters is a good day, no matter what the adversity or intimacy it is. And as we showed up toward the headwaters where the river begins from a larger body of water, we just finished kind of.
So now he explains, now we see a larger body of water, and so that's a good way to visually describe what they're actually coming up upon.
Soothing wounds in the water, kind of scratched up, and so on and so forth. And we were just sitting silently and just kind of soaking it all in. We rested before we make our way out into the big water and find a campsite. And it just seemed like, oh man, we might have wasted a whole bunch of time. And all of a sudden, we started to hear some ruckus and racket coming from what looked like an old overgrown beaver lodge.
So setting up an old overgrown beaver lodge, which I think would help kind of understanding what they look like, you know, because, you know, a bunch of sticks maybe, or, you know, a mound maybe, but setting that up, and I think he sets that up very well, because first they're sitting down and then they look over and you hear some noises from the beaver mound, and then as it goes on, he kind of describes it a little bit more.
This little nook where we were sitting, and we started hearing this little chattering sound.
How would you interpret that? That's the chattering sound. So that's an interesting one to kind of try to figure out, especially if it was on the spot. You know, that would kind of, I think, throw me back a little bit.
We both were keenly interested in what was going on there, and all of a sudden some otters started showing up and moving around and frolicking, literally playing with one another on top of the beaver lodge and around. And then
so he says beaver lodge, and then he's talking about otters. So I think making that clarification is really important, because